Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to Gettin' Savvy in Health, Wealth, and Beauty. Important to note that everything is for entertainment purposes only. Please do speak and meet with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. And also, please meet and speak with your GP before making any health or beauty decisions. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special show that we have for you today on Getting Savvy in Health and Wealth. I'm going to turn it right over to Melissa for the introduction to, again, a very well-known name and respected guest. Melissa.
Yeah, so today we have on Dr. Sheldon Herzig, owner of the Herzig Eye Institute, and he's going to talk to us about our eyes, and specifically what we need to know about cataracts, and also what we need to know about corrective techniques. When is the best time to do it? Who's a good candidate? Who's not a good candidate? Is it too late? And all sorts of those topics and those questions. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show. Thank you.
And Melissa, I should just mention, sorry, prior to us starting, it's interesting just to note that Dr. Herzig was really the pioneer in so much of what seems to be somewhat commonplace today, going back to the early 90s. I think it might be interesting for everybody to just get caught up to date, because your name is so ubiquitous in our sense when we think about eyes. But take us back a little bit to how you started.
Well, I've always been interested in latest technologies in eye surgery. I always wanted to have the best technologies for my patients. And when laser vision correction came along, prior to that, there'd been a procedure called radial keratotomy that was used to correct nearsightedness. And while I did some patients with that procedure, it never really excited me. I didn't think it was the future. And so when laser vision correction came along in the early 90s, I jumped right on it and waited till it was approved in Canada, and started treating patients. And the results were amazing right from the beginning. And obviously over the years, technologies, software that guides our lasers has improved. But even looking back to the patients I did in the 90s, they're still doing great. And
Wow.
what we're talking about is refractive surgery. And there's some confusion in the public about what refractive surgery is. So to start off with, you have to understand what a refractive error is. And an error is, of course, something that's not right. And there are different kinds of refractive errors. There's nearsightedness or myopia, where people can't see far away. There's farsightedness, which affects near vision more. And then there's presbyopia, which is a loss of reading vision with age, and that's a totally different issue. So refractive surgery corrects our refractive errors, and it's a life-changing procedure where patients that have had horrible vision overnight, within a few minutes of surgery, changes their lives, and they can see beautifully.
Curious.
Yeah.
What is it exactly that you're correcting? Like, what is it within the lens that has now has an error?
Okay. There are different kinds of refractive procedures. Nearsightedness, which is the most common, or myopia, is because the eyeball is too big. So the focusing mechanism at the front of the eye is focusing in the middle of the eye or in front of the retina. So what a laser procedure does is it changes the shape of the cornea so that the image is moved onto the retina. It's the same thing that glasses do, or contact lens.
Right.
But by changing the power of the cornea, we now have an eye that can see perfectly or near perfect without glasses or contact lenses. And there are different reasons for nearsightedness and farsightedness. And the main issue with any procedure that's available is picking the right procedure for the right patient. And over the years, we've developed procedures that are better for certain types of problems, and it's not always laser vision correction. First of all, there's three types of laser vision correction. There's the more commonly known LASIK, PRK, which was the original procedure, And what we're doing more frequently now is a procedure called SMILE. And all three of those procedures change the cornea the same way, but they use a different kind of laser. SMILE stands for small incision lenticule extraction. So what that means is instead of making a flap like in LASIK or PRK, where you're treating the whole surface of the eye and creating a scratch on the eye, SMILE is done through a tiny incision with the entire procedure done within the substance of the cornea. And its main benefit is it tends to produce less dryness of the cornea, which has been one of the most common issues with the other laser procedures. And now we also have what's called the implantable Collamer lens. The human
I heard
cornea,
about
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah, the human cornea can only take so much change. And then you start to make it too thin and get into problems, or you change the quality of the corneal optics. So the ICL is a beautiful procedure where people with Coke bottle glasses, with
Mhm.
with a 10-minute procedure, they have near perfect vision.
So
And
it's like an implantable contact lens. Is that how I'm
exactly.
understanding
Yeah.
it?
ICL actually stands for implantable Collamer lens because Collamer is the material it's made from, but a lot of people call it the implantable contact lens. But
Yeah.
contact refers to a lens that's contacting the cornea. This
So
is
why would somebody choose that over LASIK or laser
Or
correction
smile.
or
okay.
smile? Yeah.
Well, usually patient doesn't have a choice.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll give them, it's either or, but we usually point them in the direction we really want them to go. There are certain levels of nearsightedness and farsightedness that are too much for corneal surgery. So if you think about it, when you put this tiny little lens through a tiny opening, you're not altering the anatomy of a person's eye. You're putting this tiny lens in, it sits in front of their natural lens, very tolerated by the eye. This material has no issue after 25 years of use. And the next day, they've got near perfect vision.
At what age can you get that done?
The youngest we do are 18-year-olds because typically eyes can still change a lot, even in the early 20s. But you have 18, 19-year-olds who maybe want a career where they can't have poor vision, police officers, military, firefighters. So they have it done at a younger age. And if their vision changes down the road, they can have a little touch up and fix it.
So do people that are weary of eye surgery or something going wrong tend to choose this implantable lens more often?
Well, it's because, first of all, it was an unknown. I mean, everybody
Okay.
knew about laser correction. And
Okay.
then when I started doing it 22 years ago, um, it was a little more difficult to get people to accept something like this, putting a
Mhm.
foreign body in the eye. But as more and more people were getting it done and realizing how quick the recovery is and understanding that in many situations it's the safer option. So you've got better quality of vision, you've got safety. We're now getting more and more people just coming in asking for it.
Hmm.
Interesting.
How did
Catherine, did you ever have glasses or did you ever have any eye surgery?
well, I had perfect vision for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I was studying for my CFA in the finance world. And I always had my light on my right side, not my left, and I would study 5 hours a day for this after work. And the left side of my left eye seemed to need more help seeing distance. And then yeah, over time both did, like 1.5. But then as I age, I do need glasses to see close up. And it is, it's a bit frustrating, I would say. But I'll say too, not having ever heard of those other options and just hearing about LASIK, one of my concerns, well, my concern has been like, I love to see everything and I'm concerned about, like, I'd want to get one eye done at a time. Which I know is probably really stupid, and I think back in the day people did. So there's that aspect, the fear factor. But then also my concern is people do come away, from what I understand, with maybe some red eyes, dry eyes, And then over a number of years, it doesn't seem to have worked as well for as long as they thought. Now, these are conversations I had 7 or 8 years ago. So I don't know if it's improved. That would be a question.
Well, when you change a person's cornea, there is a healing response. And sometimes after a few years, the surface of the cornea has healed a bit and there is some change, which can be, as long as it's safe, it can be corrected. The issue of losing reading vision, which you alluded to, that's called presbyopia. And that's caused by the human lens getting denser, getting a little harder with age. And we have this beautiful lens in our eye, and it accommodates. So when we want to look in the distance, the muscle that surrounds the lens relaxes. And when we look up close, the muscle contracts and the shape of the lens changes.
Hmm.
As you get into your 40s, and that lens doesn't want to change its shape anymore. So gradually you start noticing you got to hold things further and further apart. We now have treatments for the loss of reading vision as well. And quite often when we are doing someone in their 40s and 50s, if they're nearsighted, obviously with nearsightedness, you can read without glasses. So we tend to leave one eye a little undercorrected. So they can see nicely in the distance and get most of their near vision needs looked after as well. The other connection with refractive surgery is now cataract surgery, which we discussed earlier. Now, cataract surgery obviously is a procedure that is totally covered by government insurance in Ontario, OHIP. But refractive surgery is not covered. And what is refractive surgery associated with cataract surgery? What it is using lenses with different functions, using diagnostic tests that make sure we have the right power of lens in the eye. And now there's even a lens called the light adjustable lens. It's put in a person's eye, and starting 3-4 weeks after their surgery, we can adjust the power of the lens. So if the initial power of the lens we put in is off a little bit, we can fine tune it and we get unbelievable accuracy that way. And there are also lenses now that we call multifocal lenses that give people distance and reading vision. So imagine somebody develops a cataract.
So tell me, what would people notice when they're developing a cataract? What change in their vision would they notice?
Well, the most common symptom is blurred vision.
Okay.
And sometimes it starts as a little glare at night, more difficulty under dimmer light conditions. But the most common thing is just blurred vision. So if someone all their life has been wearing glasses to see far away, and then they get into their 50s and now they're wearing bifocals, they quite often will opt for a multifocal lens. So the cataract comes out. Now they have a clear lens in their eye, and this clear lens can see near and far. So all of a sudden they don't need glasses distance or near. So combining refractive surgery with cataract surgery,
Right.
it's great. It's fantastic.
So just so I'm understanding, so all of a sudden you find yourself, you've never had corrective refractive surgery, and you're finding that you need cataract surgery. So you're saying now's the time, let's just do it both. Is that right?
Patient comes in and they appreciate the fact that they have a cataract and it needs to be treated.
Okay.
It's up to me to educate them on what their options are. Now, there are people who love wearing their glasses. They have no interest in, because there's costs involved in
Sure.
refractive surgery. So they have to understand, number one, what is available based on their problem. And then they decide whether they care about wearing glasses or not. If they do, then they have this wonderful option of refractive surgery combined with the cataract surgery that allows them to eliminate their glasses as well.
Hmm.
Question.
Go ahead.
So question. So I was under the newer impression for me, which is that almost everybody ends up with cataracts.
If you live long
And
enough, yes.
okay, good. God willing, yes, let's get cataracts. So if that's the case, and you're thinking about laser surgery, why not just and you don't have too many problems yet, and maybe you don't even have a cataract, but because I've thought about this, why wouldn't I just leapfrog the process and get new lenses?
Oh,
Very good question. Because we have a procedure called a refractive lens exchange,
hmm.
where we'll change a person's lens rather than do a laser procedure because it's the best way to do it. Obviously, someone who's in their 20s, 30s, they don't want to give up their accommodation, their ability to read. So we just fix their distance vision. But if you're 45 plus and maybe your lens, your natural lens is starting to change a bit, it may be better to do a refractive lens exchange, not wait till the lens is cloudy. That's done all the time.
Hmm.
Hmm. Interesting. So I think I'm a tough case because
Of
why
course
would
you
I
are.
be easy in any realm of life? Okay, so when I grew up, and you can help people understand this, I could see perfectly out of my left eye, but my right eye was much weaker. So what they told me was that if I was ever going to try to correct it, I had to wear a patch, an eye patch on my good eye to force
Yeah.
my eye to become better. But I was vain, and I was a gymnast, and I thought, how am I going to live with an eye patch? Like, yeah, I can't have a patch. So I just
The
let it,
beam.
yeah, so I just let it be. So I all of my life had one eye, which gave me very poor depth perception. But it was fine. As I'm getting older now and starting to get presbyopia, and as my eyes are getting worse, I'm finding that I got a lot of strain in that good eye. And is there no way to fix my bad eye and give me like better vision so that I'm better at tennis?
Um,
Because it all comes back to my
Oh
tennis.
yeah. Yeah, that'll help. That, yeah, US Open is on now, and that'll put you right up there.
if you'd been a good kid and worn the patch, you would have been fine now.
I know I could have done that, but I didn't. So,
Well, just so you understand, what you have is an amblyopic eye.
okay.
When baby's born and as they develop in their early years of their life, the visual area in the brain that corresponds to each eye has to be stimulated equally.
Hmm.
So if there's a big prescription difference between the eyes, or if a child has an eye that turns in or out and isn't being used much, the visual area in the brain doesn't develop.
Hmm.
So once you reach a certain age, 6, 7, 8 years old, it's the party's over. There's no way to stimulate the brain anymore,
Hmm.
and you're stuck with an eye that doesn't see that well.
So there's nothing to do about this bad eye.
Nothing. No, you can't make it perfect.
Better.
Uh,
Okay.
you can't. But even the eyes that are not perfect develop cataracts, or they have a very significant prescription. You can make it better with refractive surgery, but you never have a perfect 20/20 vision.
So can an amblyopia eye get a little bit better or no? Can it get as good as it was?
Yeah, if you eliminate the things that have developed with age, those
Mm-hmm.
things can be eliminated to at least get you back to where it was when you were younger.
Hmm. Okay, so that's a potential option.
Mhm.
But all right, interesting. So who do you think is the absolute perfect candidate for corrective
Okay.
eye? Yeah.
So taking a younger person with simple issue of nearsightedness, we make sure that their corneas are perfectly healthy. Some corneas are too thin, so
Mm-hmm.
you can't take any tissue away. Some have a weakness in the structure of the cornea. The biomechanics of the cornea are not appropriate for changing them. But if a cornea is thick enough for a procedure,
Okay.
um, it's strong based on all the diagnostic tests we do, and we do an awful lot of testing before we treat anybody, then they're a perfect candidate for a laser procedure.
Right. So people that just can't see far away.
You can't see
Need
far.
glasses, they're sick of wearing their glasses, get it fixed. Great.
Yeah. That's the
Okay.
simplest solution.
Yeah.
We do a
Okay. And
lot.
like Catherine, you were saying, if you don't want to wait until you need cataract surgery farther down the road, you could potentially, like you said,
Well,
um,
I was just leaving, like I've been thinking, I haven't, I mean, my husband got
remember.
lenses put in because he had a cataract,
Yeah.
and his vision is incredible now. And so I was thinking, like, maybe I just
Why
leapfrog.
wait?
What's that? Why wait?
Wait.
Why
Yeah.
wait?
Well, one reason to wait and is if you're not suffering too badly.
Right.
Technology improves every 3-4 years. We got a better lens. I mean, at some point, someone has to say this is going to be wonderful for me, because you can always say even 4 or 5 years later, um, the same thing. I can wait
Right.
another 4 or 5 years, but it's how much it bothers you as to when you take the plunge.
So so if you did get a lens put in now, and then there is dramatic improvement in the lenses, that is what we've seen, can you and do you get the lens replaced, or is that adding too much risk to the eye?
Well, you can get the lens replaced, certainly if your lens isn't working anymore,
Okay.
and fix both distance and reading vision.
Okay. And what are the risks? This all sounds great, but what are the risks?
When we're talking about any surgical procedure, whether it's laser or an intraocular lens exchange, um, there's always a risk of infection.
Mm,
Fortunately, the risk of infection is probably in the order of 1 in 100,000. I mean, it's extremely rare.
okay.
You're dealing with intraocular procedures on a very nearsighted eye. The retina is a little thinner and more susceptible to retinal detachment, even if a surgeon doesn't touch that eye.
Wow.
Before we do an intraocular procedure on a very nearsighted eye, while we examine the retina as well, we always get a retinal consult to make sure we're not missing anything. So
Mm,
at least the risk is as close to zero as possible.
okay. And with Melissa, we were just talking about some of the potential risks, but you know, are there people who come in and then hear everything and then just say this just isn't for me? And what kind of person what would they be thinking? Do you think?
I think there's two reasons why people don't have refractive surgery. One is certainly the cost, and
Mhm.
the other is, as you've indicated, is fear of a complication, no matter how reassuring a surgeon is. You
Hmm.
always list what the potential risks are, and people have to weigh their aggravation in life relative to
Right.
a little bit of risk.
So as you mentioned, one of the risks is risk of infection, and that is, of course, any surgery, period. Question, I don't know if you've seen this more. I'm just hearing it from some of my girlfriends, but I've heard more girlfriends have eye infections or irritation. Maybe it was the wildfires this summer. I'm not sure. So I don't know that they're saying that, but that's question number one. But question number two is, this girlfriend of mine, she went to her eye doctor. She's on antibiotics. It was improving very slowly. She went to her facialist. They did red light therapy, on her face, and it helped her eye.
Well, I mean, I can't comment on something that some other issue that I haven't seen. There are skin conditions that lead to
Mhm.
inflammatory situations in the eyes, and dryness of the eyes, specifically something called acne rosacea. You see people with little veins on their skin and their face. From what I understand, red light therapy is useful for that. And the rosacea can affect the eyelids, which then results in um,
Hmm.
dry eyes. And dry eyes more susceptible to just surface infections and just being red in general,
Hmm.
because anything that lands on the eye has an inflammatory response.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay.
And do you
Well,
see a lot of people with it's becoming more common to get fake eyelashes.
Oh, I
So
hate them. I hate them.
hate them.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Why?
obviously, young ladies think it makes them looks better, and that self-image. It's an issue when you're doing surgery. First of all, they're expensive,
Mhm.
and we're taping the lids back sometimes. We don't want to pull out these expensive lashes, so we just have to keep them out of the way. But
Yeah.
it's not that big a deal, but I'd rather have a patient without it.
So I had one patient that went to the US to have her eye color changed. So she'd always wanted blue eyes, and she was able to find a surgeon in the US who will change the pigment, I guess, of the iris and made her eyes blue. Do you think this is going to be more common?
So there's a couple of ways to do that. One is with a contact lens, obviously, which isn't a
Yeah.
permanent change. That's the safest way to change your
Mhm.
color. There were we call it an artificial iris. The iris is what gives you your color. There were these implants that were put in people's eyes, and people actually had to go to places like Mexico to get this done. Absolute disaster.
Hmm.
Caused glaucoma,
Oh God.
had tremendous visual loss. It was not the right thing to do. But it's interesting. I've been involved in some studies recently about a laser that reduces the amount of pigment in brown eyes and can turn them green or blue. And that's something that's probably on the horizon.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Melissa, your eyes are blue, right?
Yeah. I yeah. Damn it. Oh, it's my thing.
Everyone's gonna copy
Now
you.
everybody can change their eyes. The one thing that's left that you can't change is the one thing I want to change is height. Everybody can be skinny now with Ozempic. You can change your hair, your eyes, but when are they going to give us that extra, 5 inches?
Speaking of when and new technology, in addition to what you've just mentioned, Dr. Herzig, is there other items, technology that's exciting you right now, or what do you hope to see?
I think we've touched on the latest things. The light adjustable lens is certainly the latest thing. Smile, well, I've been doing it for 10 years. The smile procedure isn't that commonly done. It's very expensive technology, and LASIK is still a wonderful procedure. So most surgeons haven't adapted to smile.
Mhm.
Um, there is another procedure coming along where a little tiny microscopic bit of donor tissue from donor
Hmm.
corneas
Hmm.
uh, is put into a patient's cornea to restore reading vision. And
Wow.
we're just getting into that. It is approved in Canada, and we haven't done any procedures yet, but it's it's exciting technology, and I can't comment more on it because I haven't done any.
Are you concerned, and just, before we wrap on vision topics, are you concerned at all with the GLP-1 drugs and vision problems
Good
or?
question.
I've never seen a patient on Ozempic or any of the other GLP ones that
Ones.
with eye problems. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think with more and more patients on these GLP-1 drugs, we'll see in the future. But yeah, I have a lot of patients on GLP-1s and I haven't really had any ocular issues. So
I think, as you say, when you have millions of people on any technology,
you're going to
anywhere,
get a side, of
you're going to
course.
get a small percentage with side effects, and with something like that, you just stop taking it.
That's good to hear because that's a frightening one, I think, for people on GLPs to worry about their eyes. Last thing, I want to see everything, right? It's the beauty of the world.
Well, come see me.
I'm
Yeah, I
going to.
will. Yeah.
I'm going.
I absolutely will. Although like I said, there's nothing,
But you could do something about your right eye.
maybe we'll go get it examined. We'll see. And the left
Yeah.
eye, now, my good eye is starting to get weaker and yeah, because that's one I rely on so much. So yeah, I used to be perfect for distance and now I notice it's getting worse. And it's also getting worse close up with the presbyopia. Anyhow,
If someone is farsighted when they're younger, the human lens adjusts for it, and your vision is perfect. And what
right,
happens first is you get into your 40s, you lose your reading vision, and then when you're in your 50s, you start losing distance vision as well.
right.
It's the aging body, right? It's all about longevity these days. That's a real focus for us. So, as we mentioned at the top, so getting savvy in health and wealth. Melissa obviously covers the health side, and then I'm on the wealth side. But it's a real conversation because how the genesis for this podcast was Melissa manages her own money and does it, in my opinion, very well. And so we were always talking about if she'd bring up a stock for me because she was, using Netflix or liking a Tesla. Well, should she buy the stock? Because that's kind of the Peter Lynch way to invest, is try to have a bit of an edge. If you see something that you're using a lot, is there something, is there a stock associated with that? And then that's when I would get into the conversation with Melissa. Well, what are the fundamentals? What are the valuation? What's the prospect? What's the market opportunity? And and then I, of course, would ask Melissa, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? How to stay healthy, all those things. So that's kind of the genesis of it. And, when we talk about the market side, I always like to just kind of give a bit of a recap, because in terms of what's gone on over the past week in the market. And what we did see, just to bring people up to date, but also it's an opportunity to talk about what matters in the market and why. So as an example, last Friday, the lower courts overturned President Trump's tariffs, saying that they didn't meet the Emergency Act use. And so we saw the market down by the Dow down by 500 points. Call it the markets across the board in the United States down 1 to 2% or so. And the reason is because there's increased risk surrounding the tariffs. There was talk about, will he have to pay back some of those tariffs that they've been collecting the money on? What does it mean for companies? A lot of the time when there's such unknown, companies don't put CapEx to work. So basically it increased the uncertainty for the, Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but we've seen these markets rebound a bit. And I think that they're rebounding because the fundamentals continue to be quite strong, particularly in the States, not so in Canada. We saw a real contraction in Canadian GDP the other week. And so we're still seeing strength in the United States. We're still seeing a consumer that seems to be resilient. We're still hearing about companies that think that they can manage the tariffs and the price increases there. And, you just seem to have more of a resilient market. And of course, the AI theme continues to work. That's been propelling the market higher. You've got tech stocks that continue to do very well in the States. So that's kind of where we're at in those US. So that's where we are in the US markets. And then in Canada, we did see the GDP here contract by 1.6%. And we're also seeing business investment down. We're also seeing home prices down, and productivity per person down as well, to levels not seen in quite some time. So to me, from an investment perspective, I still err much more towards investing in the United States than Canada at the time. And the issue, of course, is that most people have Canadian dollars to invest in. But Dr. Herzig, as you probably know, there's ETFs that allow you to use your Canadian dollars to still get exposure to the United States markets. So, that's kind of where we are on the market front. And, I'm a big believer, I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of having your own self-directed account, and then also so that you really participate in what's going on and articulate those thoughts by buying by yourself, and then also an advisor as well. But do you have much interest or knowledge in this area?
Oh, no. I learned a long time ago to let the experts look after the money.
Yeah.
And that's worked well for me. It's interesting you talk about the markets, because all this talk about refractive surgery, as I mentioned, it's not cheap to get this done.
Mm.
And when the economy slips, as it has more recently, people are less likely to spend discretionary income, and it's shown up in companies that like make the ICL, a company called Star. Their stock dropped dramatically.
Oh.
And as a result of the stock dropping, a bigger company has bought them. I mean, that hasn't.
Which one?
The company that made the ICL is Star, STAAR.
Okay.
They've been doing that right from the beginning, and they're doing great and have been expanding wonderfully for many years. And I didn't follow the exact pricing, but they dropped considerably. And Alcon, which is very big in ophthalmic equipment, bought them. Now, I think it's still going through the changeover process, but They've made an offer. Um, the company
Interesting.
that makes the light adjustable lens. I mean, we talked to the surgeons all over the world. We're on emails together, and everybody's excited about it, using it, and yet their stock dropped too. So I don't
Hmm.
understand why these things happen, but I'm sure there is a good market reason.
Yeah, well, a lot of those, depending on the type of company, but the medical equipment companies, they often trade on volume and volume of sales.
Yeah.
So, and procedures. So that's what investors would look at. If the procedures are down or the trend is trending lower, those stocks often can move on that. What's the company that does ICL, if you remember?
Star.
Oh, that's Star.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Star. Yeah. The company that does the light adjustable lens is RX Sight.
RX. That's what I meant. RX site. I'll take a look at both of those. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But you would have a good view in terms of the consumer. How much does it cost, the ICLs or the refractive surgery?
In the US or Canada?
Both. That's actually interesting.
Well, we get quite a few American patients because of the Canadian dollar, and for many years there were improvements in the ICL that the FDA wouldn't approve, and we had many patients coming from the US because everybody knows everything. Everybody researches things. They're aware of the latest advances. Even in the multifocal lenses that have improved in Canada, but not the US, people are coming up to Canada to get them done. So as far as cost goes, um, an ICL is probably about $4,000 an eye.
An eye. Hmm.
Yeah. And the adjustable lenses are even more expensive than that, $5,500 to $6,000 an eye, because there's a lot of time involved.
Mhm.
There's purchasing a lens made in the US with Canadian dollars.
Mhm.
It's
Melissa, we were just saying how it's interesting because, when you look at what's going on in any industry, you can get a read on the economy. And Dr. Herzig was saying that, some companies have actually seen whether it's volumes or procedures drop off, you can see it, right? And one of the company's stock dropped dramatically, which caused another company to come in and buy it. So
Hmm.
it's I that's why I think investing is so interesting because you actually have so much information at your fingertips, in which to use that as a starting point and then do some homework if it interests you.
I've had analysts call me from time to time about technologies, wondering how it was doing. So
Yeah.
I'll tell them the truth, and
Ah,
they,
I
they
should
pass
hope
on
so.
they pass on the message to someone like you.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Herzig, this brings up an interesting discussion that Melissa and I have, which is controversial, well, between the two of us, or we disagree. Melissa often says investing is gambling, and I always say it's
Not
not.
all investing.
Okay,
I don't say investing is gambling. I said
okay.
people can confuse investing with gambling. So a lot of people who especially are using a web broker on their phone or doing it themselves, investing the old Warren Buffett way where you buy a company that you think is good and that you know something about and you buy and you hold for a long time to get compound interest, that can be investing. Gambling is when you, I think, sometimes are selling puts and calls and you're doing a bunch of trades and you are, using it more like betting as opposed to investing. But anyhow, but I don't think all investing is gambling.
Okay.
I think
There's
investing
an
is,
ad. Yeah,
but
I think, okay. So Dr. Rizek, you may remember, and I referenced him already, but Peter Lynch, famous investor out of Fidelity. And, he, as I mentioned, would maybe look at like, back in the day, I think it was the store called The Limited. And I think he noticed that his daughters loved the sweaters from The Limited. This is going back into the 80s. And so he looked at the stock, he looked at the company and the fundamentals. And so I've been reading his book. I didn't bring it up with me. It was actually written in 1984. And I think that was the last update. It was 1984, I believe. I'm reading two books right now. No, that's wrong. I'm also reading The Intelligent Investor,
that's a
which
good one.
which is a great one. And that was Warren Buffett's mentor. So I got the dates wrong, but point being, Peter Lynch does address is investing, gambling, and what he says is in an overvalued market, most stocks are risky. He also separates, though, gambling from investing in the sense of, gambling is gambling, but investing is if you do your homework, you apply the same skill set, you look at the fundamentals, you have a system, you are much more likely to be able to, choose and invest in a solid company. Versus, to your point, Melissa, a lot of people will just kind of chase that new shiny penny and buy and sell. And to him, that's like, you might as well just go to the horse races and buy on the bet on the prettiest horse. But the fundamentals, if you can actually learn how to do the fundamentals, which his point also is way back when, there's so much more at our fingertips right now. There's newsletters, there's CNBC, there's podcasts, there's so much information out there, including the company's 10Ks, their annual reports, their 10Qs, prospectuses. There's so much at people's fingertips right now that if you just kind of apply a little bit of a system, which can often be just recognizing, where the stock is today, what the opportunities are, what the risks might be, and what the valuations are. People, I'm not saying do this only on your own at all, but Melissa, you're doing it because you are recognizing some of those aspects I just mentioned.
Yeah, I'm doing it on my own because when I was, gave my portfolio initially when I started to a company, I felt like they didn't necessarily have my best interests. They were more interested in what was going to make them percentage. Now, this isn't all portfolio managers by any means, but I think that I realized and I had read that I was paying a lot in interest and fees,
Yeah.
and that was affecting my returns. And so then I thought, I'm going to get savvy and I'm going to learn a little bit about this myself and educate myself so that I wouldn't be gambling, so that I would be investing. And I think more and more, certainly with younger generations, are taking this approach because, like you said, we have so much information at our fingertips that we didn't have years ago. I don't think you'd be able to do this because not everybody was privy to information. Now with ChatGPT and AI, it's much easier to get an understanding of how to do it. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting ads on my Instagram every day for Wealthsimple. They're basically paying you to transfer your money over to them right now. It's a great deal. So I think there's more and more people that are going to start using these apps and doing it themselves with guidance. But anyhow, so what other stocks did you want to talk? Did you see the news on Google?
That they won the case.
Case,
Yeah.
yeah, that was very good.
Yeah.
I think,
So yeah, and Google was very underloved by the street. And when I say the street, I mean institutional investors going back a couple of months ago, and they were concerned about how do you, and I've said this before, but how do you transition your Google search users to Google AI? And, I sat back and I looked at the valuation. I looked at the fact that institutions don't like it. And I used to cover institutions. And when that changes, it changes fast and furious. So I thought it was an interesting opportunity. And the stock has performed very nicely over the past even just couple of weeks. So that's positive news on that stock. So going back to the Peter Lynch method, which is, okay, you get pieces of information along the way. If those pieces of information are positive and they continue to add to your thesis of owning it, you continue to own it. And if the opposite is true, that's when there's a time to sell, because it's always difficult to know when to buy and when to sell. But I did look at a couple stocks today. I thought one was interesting, maybe because it trades in Canada and the United States. So you can use your Canadian dollars or your US dollars. And it's Brookfield, BN is the ticker. And BN is the holding company, this diversified holding company for all of the Brookfield companies, like Brookfield Asset Management. So they have real estate, they have private equity, they have private credit. Brookfield has an infrastructure company as well that trades separately. And BN kind of sits on top of that. And I saw it was initiated to buy over at a large cap, big investment bank in the States. And there's about 20% upside, 18 to 20% upside. and it trades at about 14.5 times 2026 earnings. So that's the PE multiple, price over earnings, which is less than some of these other alternative managers like KKR and Apollo, so two huge companies in the States, by quite a bit of a margin. So to me, it actually looks interesting, and it does pay a dividend. I don't have that at the top of my fingers. But to me, that was slightly interesting. Now that's more of a steady Eddie. You get exposure to global real estate, global private equity, global private credit, so, for more of a kind of expect it to be somewhat of a solid performer. I thought that was interesting to pass on to you, Melissa. Melissa likes, Dr. Herzig, Melissa likes more of the sizzle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I like the growth stocks that are exciting and yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with like the Philip Morrises of the world, or
Well,
when something's under love, like a Google, Apple I bought as well. So we have a little bit of a different style.
There's a little bit of controversy about Brookfield recently because our present prime
minister.
minister, yeah, moved it to New York. Um, and it wasn't, it's Canadian companies moving it to New York, and now he's going to become Prime Minister of Canada. So
Yeah.
it wasn't
Well,
looking a positive thing on his part.
I agree, and that's what's kept me refrain from buying it.
Okay.
It has.
Yeah.
So, I shouldn't, I do buy sin stocks, which would be like an Altria, smoking, but, I don't, people are gonna smoke, but
Let me
yeah.
ask you a question relating it back to
Wait, sorry,
oh,
moving the headquarters, got a problem with. Go on, Melissa, sorry.
what was his other option?
Keep it in Canada.
Well,
Yeah.
what was that a conflict?
No.
So
I
why
think
did
the
he go to
Congress was
the US?
moving it to New York. Anyway, a lot
Yeah.
of sticky things going on. Hey,
Yeah.
I've got a patient.
Gotta go. Okay,
Problem. Yeah,
Dr.
thanks for
Herzig,
joining
thank
us.
you.
So nice to meet you guys, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
We'll
I
see
will
you
be there.
soon.
Yeah, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So Melissa, one other stock, and one thing that you mentioned, we can, just end on this last thing. You opened up a margin account because you thought you might want to buy call options,
Yes.
and maybe on Lululemon. I don't know.
Yes.
So there's three parts to all of that. What's a margin account? A margin account is where you basically borrow money from the bank. So you open up a margin account. This is not for beginner investors at all.
You have to borrow money from the
You
bank.
don't have to. You don't have to. But if you want to, right. Well, two things. If you want to buy options, they require you to open a margin account, as far as I know, or that's always been the way. So what is a margin account? A margin account is where the bank, the investment bank, will allow you to borrow money from the bank. So if you've got $5,000 to invest, but you want to invest 10,000 for most stocks, they'll lend you that 50%. So you can invest 10,000 versus 5,000, and you have to pay interest on that borrowing. And if it allows you to essentially, as I said, invest more money than you have. So there's
You can also do options trading on money that you have without borrowing.
exactly. You don't,
Okay.
but they want you to open up a margin
Yeah.
account to do
Right.
that.
Mhm.
So, if you are thinking about a call option is just a financial contract. You can buy one contract. One contract equals 100 shares, and it gives the buyer of that contract the right to buy the stock, but not the obligation at a specified price, which is called the strike price. So if you think that, a company, you buy a call option and the strike price is $100 and the price goes to 110, you will exercise that call option. You'll buy the shares out at that $100 and you'll sell it at 110 and capture that $10 gain.
Okay, that's if you're buying it.
That's if you're buying it. We're not going to get into selling call options for today. Like, let's just stick with one, because
Okay.
what it allows you to do is one contract and say the contract is $5. Okay, $5 per contract. So your outlay is $500. So if you don't have $5,000 to go buy the stock, you've got the opportunity to just put down $500 because you think the
You
stock is
might.
going to go higher, and it's going to go higher and hit that strike price within a certain period of time. And what you can do is, rather than even ever going out in the market and buying the stock, the value of that call option will increase. So many people just sell the call option in the market.
This is very advanced.
It's very advanced. It is. So
Yeah,
I know you said
this
you
is something that I'm just starting to read
to look at. Yeah.
look at, and it was more just in terms of a stock, like we talked about with Lululemon. This is a stock that we've talked about for, almost a year now that
Yeah.
has really taken a hit, and I still think it's a great company. I still think it has great products, and it's something that I wouldn't mind owning in my portfolio. And it's getting to a price now where it's starting to look attractive. So I might consider, I think it would be, I have to again look into this more. If there's something that I think I'd be willing to own, even if it goes down further, I might,
Mhm.
isn't it sell a call option on it?
You could buy a put.
Buy a put. Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. We clearly
Okay.
are not going to talk about this today, but
Okay,
why
we
don't I
won't.
talk about a topic that I do know a lot
Okay,
about?
but wait, let me just round up the Lulu conversation, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Because it has been down by 23% on a year over year. The PE is only about 14 times, and there's a lot of people looking at this stock and wondering about, whether or not it can rebound, because it's basically at the PE is at a 10-year low, okay? So it is attractive, but here's the thing. The company, if I'm right, just did report their earnings, and they cut their fiscal year outlook because their US sales have underperformed. So we'll see
Hmm.
what the stock does tomorrow morning. So in other words, you might have a better opportunity to buy it. But yeah, the stock's down 12% right now in the after hours. It just reported. So it's still trying to find its way. But to your point, yeah, I was at an outlet mall, and there was a line up to get into Lululemon store. So maybe there's a turnaround there. Maybe. How long do you have to wait? I don't know. Okay, back
Yeah,
to you.
especially if they do cut interest rates in the US.
Yeah.
People go out spending more, and yeah. So what I was going to talk about is two things, because I know we don't have that much time. First
Yep.
is, did you see this news about the EU banning TPO, which is this substance in gel manicures?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when I first read the headline, I was like, oh, I guess you can't get a gel manicure if you're in Europe anymore. But no, all it meant is that the EU has classified a chemical in a lot of gels, the gel manicure called TPO, as a potential carcinogen and
Yep.
mutagen, and could be toxic and cause mutations in embryos. And so they have banned it. Now, we still have it in North America because Europe tends to be more conservative. And even though the risk is only shown when this was given in high amounts to animals and there hasn't been any human risks associated with, they went ahead and banned it anyway. So basically, TPO is what turns, when you get a gel manicure, they paint it on in liquid, and then you put your hand under the UV light and it hardens. So it's TPO is the chemical that allows it to do that. So it's not in all brands of polishes, but it is in a lot. So you'll no longer be able to get that kind of gel manicure in the EU anymore. We still have that here in North America. So then I thought, well, am I getting this? So I tend to get biogel. I don't know about you. That's the kind of gel manicure I get. It doesn't have TPO. So, okay. However, even if I think it did, I don't think I would be overly concerned. The amount of absorption into your blood would be so small. There hasn't been human reports of it causing harm. And I mean, typically you get a gel manicure, what, once a month? So this isn't something you're getting like every day. So the
Mhm.
more, to me, the more concern with gel manicures is putting your hand under the UV light. But again,
Yeah.
something that you do once a month. So again, that doesn't overly concern me either. And you can just put some sunscreen um, on your hands
Some
before.
people wear gloves.
Yeah, or you could wear gloves. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyhow, so that was just interesting.
Hmm.
And also, I think like in terms of talking about how it could be disruptive economically, what companies might be hit by this. So a lot of places are, first of all, like the actual salons, nail salons are going to have to throw out a lot of products. So they'll be hit in the short term. And then a lot of the companies that make these products and these polishes that have it in it are going to have to reformulate. So like LVMH might be affected, L'Oreal. So I don't know if those stocks moved on the news or if it made any, impression on
Yeah.
them. Anyways, that was one thing I thought was interesting. The other thing was an article.
But wait, let me stop you for 1 second because, sometimes over the years when I am getting biogel, right? Because it's supposed to be fine for you. And then, the container looks old and I'm like, is that really biogel in there?
Yeah.
Come on. Could be anything. So I don't know. I guess, what would be good? I'd buy my own biogel. That'd be
Yeah.
a way to. All right. What
So
was
that
the
was
other thing?
one thing. The other thing was I saw a great article that said it was titled Five Simple Ways to Find Your Biological Age. Okay. So your biological age is how your body, the age that your body is physiologically. Okay. Whereas your chronological age is the number of age you are in years.
Okay.
So this all came about because it was an episode of The Kardashians where Khloe Kardashian claimed that even though she was 40 years old chronologically, when she did her biological age test, she came out at 28. Okay.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So, so what determines our biological age? So there's a few different things that you can look at. So one of them that I thought was really interesting was actually as simple as how old do you look? How old does your face look? So they did a study and they looked at 1,000 sets of twins, okay? And they asked people to predict which twin was older based on their face and predict the age of the twin. And what they found was that perceived facial age was an accurate predictor of which twin died first.
Wow.
So, looks aren't necessarily deceiving. Right? So, and there's a reason, behind this is that the same biological mechanisms that drive aging of the skin also drive aging in the rest of the body. So if your face is starting to look old, it's likely that the rest of your body internally may also be starting to look old.
So, okay, but to do this study, I mean, they can't have somebody who has tons of filler and tons of this and facelifts and
Right. So this study was done quite a few years ago before and in older women's, or I should say in older seniors. So it was less commonplace to have all those procedures. So now there is a way to sort of cheat the test. Yes. Okay. But, I saw a picture of a woman on social media and it was a lovely interview and it was so impressive that she came out and she spoke about her struggles with alcoholism over the years and how she's finally stopped drinking, but she looked 20 years older than her actual age. Like in looking at her, I was like, oh my God, she definitely, like her skin looks old. Now, maybe she was a sun worshiper, but I think that things like, smoking heavily, drinking, these things age us externally and also internally, right?
1,000%.
Yeah. So it says that, when basically what happens behind aging is our DNA gets damaged in our cells and also we get immune dysfunction. And so those things are, the driving force behind aging. The other thing is collagen, which I'm sure you've heard of, is collagen's the major structural protein in our skin. Okay. We all think about collagen associated with skin, but it also makes up our blood vessels and our bones. So use collagen. If you're somebody and you see that their collagen starting to look really broken down, like they've got the fine lines, wrinkles, sagging skin, it could be a clue that the collagen in the rest of the body is also starting to break down. Just something that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So the next thing was, and I know we love to do these like fitness challenge tests. The next one was how long you can stand on one leg.
Okay.
Okay. So what this is really looking at is strength and balance. And often as we age, we lose strength, particularly lower body strength, and we lose balance. And one of the main causes of death in seniors is falls. It's a major cause of mortality and morbidity. So to do this test, you stand on one leg. So you stand on your dominant leg. So like the main leg you would use to kick a ball. Okay. You cross your arms, you stand on one leg, and you set a timer. Okay. And you go as long as you can. If you have to uncross your arms, or if you have to shuffle your foot, or if you just fall, then you stop the timer. That's your time. And you're allowed best out of 3, because one time you might be nervous or whatever. And then you can look and see how long you could do it for correlates with your biological age. So they stop the clock on this after 45 seconds. So if you can do it for longer than 45 seconds, you're good. And you might want to then try it with your eyes closed.
Okay.
Your eyes closed is much harder. And I did it today, obviously.
Of course you did.
Yeah, and I was over a minute, and then I stopped with the one leg. But I'll tell you, so it said, if you manage 13 seconds with your eyes closed, that corresponds to being able to stand on one leg at 45 years old. Okay, so that's if you can do it with your eyes closed. So there's a graph that you can look up to see how long you can do this for and what age that correlates to. And I'll post it on my Instagram, the graph that you can look at. It said even the youngest 18 to 39 group only could manage 15 seconds with their eyes closed. And
I'm surprised.
I know. While people over 80 lost their balance or opened their eyes just after 2 seconds.
Okay.
So this is a good thing. So it's a good thing to train, because if you notice that, oh, wow, I'm not very good at this, this is something that you can get better with through practice. And that might make a big difference in how you recover or preventing falls as you age. So it says, and just to remind you, 1/3 of older people who fall and break their hip die within 12 months.
My God.
That's the statistic.
That's awful.
Yeah, and most of them don't die from the fall itself, but because of the stress of the fracture and the extended recovery period, that exacerbates other health programs. So we really need to prevent falls in the elderly. And one way to prevent falls is increase your balance and increase your strength.
Yeah.
Okay, the next was VO2 max. So VO2 max is a big buzzword, and everybody talks about that right now with longevity medicine. And the reason is that the observation that VO2 max is a very strong predictor of future health.
Are you saying mass?
VO2 max.
Max, okay.
Let me explain to you what this means. I'll just break it down. So V is volume, O2 is oxygen, and max is maximum. So your VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen that you can consume at the highest rate of working out. So it's like, have you sprint as fast as you can, and how much oxygen can you consume during that period? That's your VO2 max. So it's not a fun test to do because it's like exhausting. Okay.
Wow.
And it says that a study in 2018 found that people in the bottom 33% of the population for VO2 max were almost twice as likely to die as people in the top third. So it's important to train to improve your VO2 max. So how do you do that?
What's your stamina? It's stamina at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like, how do we train this? Okay. So one way is, so the ideal is a combination of high intensity interval training with zone 2 cardio training. So high intensity interval training is basically getting to close to like 90% of your max heart rate, and then taking breaks. So sprints and then jogging recoveries. Or going on the Peloton, doing intense like cycling and then recovery. So it's those interval type workouts.
Okay.
So that maybe twice a week, and then combined with zone 2, which is where you only get up to, maybe 60% to 75% of your max heart rate. So basically it's a conversational pace. So you're walking and you're talking on the phone to your friend, but you're like, they can hear that you're doing something. Okay. And so it says the best athletes do zone 2 80% of the time, 20% they do high intensity interval. So that's what I've been aiming to do lately. And I do my high intensity interval through singles tennis, because I find that's like sprint starts and stops.
Interesting.
Really gets my heart rate up.
Yeah. Remind me though, the heart rate, when you say 60% and 90%, remind me the equation for that.
So you calculate your maximum heart rate. So to get your maximum heart rate, you take 220 minus your age.
Okay.
That's max heart rate. So let's say you're 40 years old, your max heart rate's 180.
Okay.
Okay. Then if you go 60 to 70%, 60 to 75% of that max heart rate, that can be considered your zone 2. That's a conversational pace.
Okay.
So when I go for a walk,
Yeah.
I usually get just into zone 2. It's where I'm swinging my arms, I'm walking, I'm not just strolling around the neighborhood. That's not a zone 2 workout.
Okay. But yeah, okay, but so 180, but what am I calculating? Like I'm taking my pulse for how long?
So if you are like me and you don't have the wearable technology, like I don't wear an Apple, although I may finally get one, but you don't. If you don't wear, like if you wear an Apple Watch or if you wear, one of these heart rate, you can try, you can just look and see what your heart rate is. For me,
Okay.
I don't have that, so I just take my pulse. So I just like wrap one hand around the other, like right, lining
Yeah.
up below your thumb, your radial pulse, and I just take a stopwatch and I count how many beats in 10 seconds, and then I times by 6.
Okay. So you do 10 seconds.
That's
Okay.
what I do. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Got it.
just, I don't want people to be obsessed with their heart rate, but I do think it's a good thing to stop and check just to see, where am I? What's my resting heart rate? You want it ideally to be
Hmm.
lower, to be more fit. How high does my heart rate go when I exercise? Am I ever training at, zone 4 or zone 5, which would be, where you look at your VO2 max? Am I getting into zone 2 when I go for a walk?
Okay.
It's a good thing to sort of get
No, it
that
is.
feedback on. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if you remember this, but when aerobics was so big back in the
Yep.
90s, I would always take my pulse, and I did aerobics like 5 times a day. And if like it was always up high. It was always
Yeah.
in a range that I wanted because that was my point and purpose for doing it.
Right.
So, but we haven't talked a lot over the past, I think, 2 decades about taking your pulse. You don't hear a lot about that. There's, so much of everything else, like
Mm-hmm.
weight training and Pilates and hit training, but that taking your pulse, I almost think went a little bit out of vogue. But
Yeah,
I hear
it's
you.
just something that's not, it's back to basics.
Yeah.
know? So, you want to combine. So I think a good thing to think about with your workouts are, am I getting zone 2 workouts in the week? Am I doing any high intensity interval training? And then obviously you also want to be doing weights because that will build strength, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and focusing also on, proper sleep and nutrition and those
Yeah.
things. Anyhow, so we've gone through
Okay.
so far. We've gone through facial age. We've gone through the
Standing.
standing one-legged test. We've gone through VO2 max. The next one is altitude or hypoxic training. So training at altitude. So this is how I'm going to justify all my ski trips to Colorado
Okay.
because it's, medically necessary that I go
Yes.
do this to improve my VO2 max. Anyhow, and then the last thing is focusing on, like I said, like the sleep, and you want to avoid overtraining as well. So,
Okay.
but it's interesting, just to wrap on this, one thing I just thought, there's been so much talk about GLP-1 drugs and Ozempic, and is this the solution to aging, and is this going to make people, super healthy? And the way I look at it is this: it can be an amazing tool, but if someone's using these drugs, and if all of a sudden you look at them and you think, oh, they look like they got older, right?
Mm.
Their face is looking like old. And oh, that person doesn't have energy anymore to exercise, and
Mm-hmm.
that person isn't sleeping well. And that person's strength is off and they're losing muscle mass. So their one-legged test is worse. It can
Mm-hmm.
actually affect you negatively so in those ways. So you have to make sure when you use these drugs, you also keep the other parts in mind that we care
Yeah.
about our body, we care about being thin, but you have to also care about maintaining those other things, like your
Mm-hmm.
collagen, like your protein intake, making sure that you have the stamina to exercise, making sure you're doing strength training, making sure you're not losing your bone density. So I just think it's a good reminder of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And on that note, my plan after this was to get on the treadmill.
Yeah, how's that
I
going?
just, oh, I'm gonna do it.
Good, Sarah. Yeah.
Because, yeah, it's part of the package, right? But I am tired. Like I didn't sleep well last night, but I think that even when you don't sleep well or whatever you don't do or what have you, it's like you still got to do it,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
the energy comes back. I always think the hardest part about me working out in the late afternoon after work is changing out of my work clothes into the exercise clothes. Once I've accomplished that step, then I'm much
Yeah.
more likely to follow through. But the hardest part is actually changing into the workout clothes.
Well, yeah, especially when like, someone else might be sitting on the couch, right? You're like, just bypass, don't even look, put the blinders on, go right to the gym.
Yeah. So is that what you're gonna do? You're gonna go on the treadmill? Are you gonna do the sprints?
Yeah, how long do I have to sprint for?
So you can do different as you're training for it. You can do like start off with just a 1 minute sprint, and
Okay.
then 4 minutes of zone two. So either light jog or walking,
Okay.
yeah. And then 1 minute sprint, and then four. So start like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's not as fun as just going on the treadmill
No, it's
or
not.
doing a show.
Oh, so much to do for the rest of our lives, God willing. God
Yeah.
willing, right? It's a
Yeah.
privilege. All
And then
right.
hopefully next week, I do want to
Yeah.
have I'm going to look back because I've been busy with like back to school time with the kids and everything. But I do want to look. I have opened up the margin accounts or the option
Okay.
trading accounts. And so I am going to start reading about it, looking at it and seeing what I think is interesting. And then we can have a good informed discussion
Okay.
next week. So,
Okay.
all
Yes,
right.
it's complicated. All right. Yeah, and then we're gonna get a private wealth manager on as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Stay tuned for that. Okay. We'll see
Talk
you
to you
later.
later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.